Well, good evening, guys. Not the way I wanted to do things tonight. I'm sorry it's not live, but we're at the mercy of things like video connections and technology. Um, so I hope you got my message that the connection is down with Comcast. Um, so I'm building these videos that I can kind of upload that you can watch, hopefully to basically cover what I wanted to talk about tonight. So first, I did want to talk about just how excited I was by all the responses. Most of the responses I got on the journals about the Declaration of Independence for our Enlightenment segment that we were talking about last week. Um, I was really um, I was really taken by a lot of the different insight and the different kind of nuance you were all bringing, and some of the critiques you were bringing to what Jefferson is saying, and the famous words he has there. I think most of you have a pretty good grasp of how to do some critical thinking on that Enlightenment document. Um, and one of the things I kept pointing out to you all is that obviously, as you can see, Jefferson's notion of freedom, rights, equality is kind of in the abstract when he's writing. It's a new thing. And we have a kind of very different notion today, maybe what he was getting at, because obviously he owned slaves. Women couldn't vote or hold office or even have jobs and money of their own at the time. And Native Americans were were not considered human either. The whole notion of freedom and who benefit from these rights has been something that's been growing and developing in the so-called sort of more perfect union, which is the clause of our Constitution. And one of the things I suggested to you all that you can think about is in what realms, even right now as we speak, do these notion of rights and freedoms need to be extended more to, right? What kind of areas are we still fighting and struggling with when it comes to the issue of human rights, when it comes to this issue of, you know, defining what freedom is? As I said, and some of you said in your comments, the Black Lives Matter movement, probably one of the most powerful civil rights movements of our history, at least of our modern history, shows that we're still struggling with the sort of reach of rights and freedom amongst African Americans in our country and people of color. One of you brought up sort of the discrimination that happens that's been kind of under the radar of Asian Americans and their treatment. But one of the things too, I suggest you all is to think about what are some of the other groups, some of the other people that we're still struggling with in this notion of equality and rights. For instance, people of non-heterosexual identity. I mean, it's only been the past 10 years that we've been starting to include that group in things like, in sort of legal things. The big one being the Marriage Equality Act that the Supreme Court withheld just a little over 10 years, not even 10 years ago, 9 years ago. There's a lot to be done there still. But also, if we wanted to continue thinking about certain things, I mean, that's a big one. The battles are going to continue to be big on that. The rights of people with physical and mental disabilities still continues to be a big struggle. One that I pointed out that still kind of flies under the radar is the unequal pay of women in general, in society, but a workforce. But the fact that women still today do not get paid the same as men do for the same job, even in higher education. I guarantee you I make not a lot more, but a bit more than my female um, colleagues who I work with. Anyhow, there's a lot of different areas, obviously, that we can see where this notion of freedom and this concept that, as we saw in our last class, is really difficult to define. What are rights? What does this mean? Human rights still is a struggle and something that still needs to be expanded. I suggested that, and something we'll be talking about, that we're looking now in our class at the late 1700s moving into the early 1800s. This is the beginning because of the printing press, literacy, the rapid rise of literacy is the beginning of the age of revolution. That the American Revolution really wasn't a revolution in the definition of the term. It was a war of independence, but it inspired the biggest revolution next to the Protestant Revolution, the French Revolution, which was definitely, in the full definition of the term, meaning something that completely overturns an established order. Well, I mean, literally flips it upside down. That didn't happen in the American Revolution, but in the French Revolution, if this were a 14-week course, we would have a week about it where literally the lower and middle class overcame centuries hold of a monarchical and aristocratic class, turns upside down and reestablished an entirely different frame of government, entirely different system, social system, and it even went way too far. If any of you know about the French Revolution, abolishing Christianity and worshiping reason and secularity, which then the Second Republic then got rid of that and brought back religion eventually. But you know, as far as a revolution goes with America, and maybe it's a good thing, I don't know. But we're kind of like a revolution moving at a snail's pace. We keep recognizing that our notion of rights and freedom needs to constantly be, well, if not protected, certainly expanded. We took a civil war to fight to emancipate slaves and to establish that the African American has personhood. It took, the suffragette movement for many decades that did involve death too, to establish that women had the mental capacity to be involved in enfranchisement, cast a right to vote. 1920, not that long ago, and then it took up until 1972 to establish the right to vote for people 18. It was 25 years old, I believe, and it was brought down to 18. But there's still lots of areas that we see that what we consider revolution being the desire to establish the autonomous rights of self-government, the sovereignty of people to grow. So maybe it's that we are working like as a revolution in slow motion. I don't know. But we are living right now in a time where these kinds of things if there's anything in this class you think about, this might be the thing to think about and to write about. Where are we going in terms of freedom? That third element of what it means to be modern, individuality, knowing that you are an autonomous individual, self-consciousness, free thinking, the ability to think, and rational thought, which leads to the scientific revolution. And the third one, freedom. We're smack dab in the middle of the struggle of understanding what is freedom, who gets freedom, how do we support that kind of freedom. And one of the things I would suggest that's hopeful, even though we're living in really tense times with this, is that equality, the call to freedom, seems to always win out eventually. I know it feels like we take backward steps every time we kind of move forward. And I'm not trying to whitewash the horrible injustices that occur every day right now. But it's also good to try to have some hope with these things. That things like the Black Lives Matter movement, the Chauvin trial verdict that happened last week, which is pretty watershed. The change does happen, and my feeling is that we're going to see change happen probably faster and bigger than you think right now, because my feeling is that we're kind of stuck fighting against reactive small group, a minority that doesn't want things to change or feels like their whiteness is being threatened, things of that sort, that it's going to be stubborn, my feeling is, and it's going to be hard to break that. But I think it will, I think it only can eventually break for a much more, I am hoping, a much more broader sense of rights, a much broader sense of, who benefits from freedom, in our country, on that level. Another area you might really want to think about when it comes to this issue of freedom, when it comes to the issue of what it means to be human and to be living in modernity is income inequality, something that affects white, black, red, brown, no matter who you are. We are living in a time when income inequality is at its most, wide, at its most crippling, and it's not tenable. It can't last much longer. It's the kind of income equality that the more and more it grows, the closer you will get to a French Revolution. And I'm hoping and I'm thinking that we have enough rational thought amongst legislation and amongst government to realize that this is not tenable. That a government realizes and business itself will realize that the fact that most people are not budging as far as making it with the cost of living, whereas only a minority are soaring that and holding most of the world's resources, that can't work. And I'll put it this way, it's not that it just can't work for the people like all of us who aren't budging, and this minority who are taking off with everything. Um, it can't help for business. I mean, that can't work for that. I have a feeling business is starting to sort of see that and coming around about that, maybe a little bit. And I'll put it this way, and it's something to think about because you're all going to be in it or you're already in it too. I've been pretty much over 20 years now in my career working, and my income has gone up, definitely. I mean, it's much bigger than it was 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. But here's the deal, guys. I'm still living within the same income as far as cost of living goes. That's the situation. None of us are making enough, who live in the middle class, the broad middle class and certainly the lower class. Nobody is making enough to keep up with the cost of living. So really, and it's the case with everybody, per capita and basically by the ratio of the cost of living, I'm pretty much making the same as I made 20 years ago. I don't save any more really than I did back then. And that's the case for a lot of people. That's the kind of thing that could breed stuff like revolution, certainly. But anyhow, I was really taken by a lot of your responses on the Declaration of Independence and that. So this is going to be the end of this lecture because I wanted to talk about that. The next one, what I want to do is I want to talk about a few issues about the Enlightenment that we didn't hit on, but as a way to transition to our next cultural period called Romanticism. Okay? All right. So